There we go. Okay, so my name's Andrea, and I'm Norm's daughter. And together we've been working and writing a book. But before we get started, I wanted to just share a little bit with something that we do in Canada, and we're seeing a little bit more around the world, is we do a land acknowledgement and just recognizing the history of the land that we're joining you from. And so I just wanted to take a minute before we start and recognize that I'm joining you from the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Hunky speaking Musqueam people. And I'm thankful for this place and this space for us to gather. I live near the water and on the west coast of Canada, and it's the Indigenous people. Long before we were here, they would come here and gather resources, and they would gather berries and fish and gather supplies over the summers and bring it back to their more permanent camps. And so I like sort of that connection to the gathering of resources and thinking about how we can sort of continue and learn from that and maybe gather some resources together even as we gather here today. So thank you for joining us. I know we're all joining from different places and locations that have different histories, and just don't want to lose sight of that and where you're calling in from and the place that you're joining from and the history and the people that have come before you and before us that have made it possible to gather here together. So thank you for joining us. As I said, my name is Andrea. I am a certified organizational coach. I wear a lot of different hats. I'm the founding director of Double Knot Works and work on my own and also quite often with Norm, all over the world, speaking and teaching and working mostly in the career development space, sometimes just in the coaching space, mentoring and working with learner coaches. Some of my students are former students I see here who are now colleagues in coaching. So hi to those of you, you know who you are. And yeah, Norm, do you want to just introduce yourself quickly?
Sure, I'm Norm Amundson, and I've been a professor at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver for many years, and retired, 5 years ago? And I thought I was retiring anyway, but Andrea had other plans. And I've been working with her on this lots of different projects, and I am really excited about this Career Wayfinder booklet that we're working on. And I now live on an island just off of Vancouver, so I have a large property and have not really a farm, but a very big garden and a place to go foraging and all sorts of interesting things on this property. So that's where I'm coming from, and I also am very pleased to recognize the Coast Salish people who have been here, you know, for and made this land and what it is today, and they make what happens here possible. So nice to meet you.
Yeah, great. All right, so today, here's just sort of a little preview of what we're going to be talking through with everyone. We're going to look a little bit at just the history of the book, who it's for. We'll look inside. We're going to give you a quick little sort of a tour of some of the pages and the highlights that are in the book. We're going to talk a little bit about training options and just some ways if you want to go a little bit deeper and learn more. How to buy the book and some different possibilities if you're looking at buying it, and how you can use this book with clients and just some strategies that we've developed, and I'm already using this with clients, and so I can kind of share some of the ways that I've been using this as well. If you have questions, feel free to just raise your hand or put it in the chat and we'll keep track of it. We'll make sure that we have time at the end as well for questions. but we're also happy to answer questions throughout, just sort of as we go. Yeah, feel free to ask. We love just sort of talking and hearing what you're wondering about. And often if you have a question, it's likely that some other people have similar questions. But yeah, we just invite you to make this a conversation instead of us having a monologue. There we go. Okay, so why don't we jump in and talk a little bit about the book. This is kind of the reason why we're here. Norm, do you want to just share a little bit about the history of the book and where this has come from?
Yeah, I think whenever you look at something like this, it just doesn't appear, magically. There's always some, source information that you're drawing from, whether it's and many of you might be familiar with career pathways or active engagement, hope action theory, which is what I've been working with more recently. All of these have kind of formed kind of a foundation for what we're doing. And I was thinking about foundations and how important that is to sort of take that out. And I mentioned I'm working with a large garden now, and in that garden, this is a time of harvest. This is a time when I'm going into the garden and picking things out and tomatoes and whatever, and we have apple trees. Here's one of my apples right there. And also sometimes I go in the forest and I'm foraging. And here's one of my mushrooms, a prince mushroom that I'm picking up from the forest. And so whatever we're sort of gathering things at this time and in new ways. And today we don't have time to go right through everything in this workbook, obviously, but we can, you know, take a slice, right? We can take a slice, we can take a piece. And that's really what we're doing today is we're taking a piece of what has gone before, and we're going to show you what has been created here. And I really have to give you a lot of credit for this, Andrea. You have pulled this together in amazing ways. I'm so excited about it because I've been involved in all these other projects in the past, but to have you come in with your coaching background and a new look and sort of pulling material from all these different directions and putting it together. She really is the driving force of this workbook. But it's, I get the pleasure of sort of being part of it and it's something special to work with your daughter on a project and to and I've been thinking about the fact that in working together, we often talk about mentoring, and what I've been involved with Andrea is really an intergenerational mentoring project where I learn as much from her as she does from me, I think. And so it's been so much fun. And really the fact that in this time of my life when I'm sort of in the harvesting mode, um, there's new things that are happening and new pieces, and so there's a lot of excitement in my life based on the kind of project that we're doing. But anyway, that's the background.
And yes, Maria, it is special on so many levels. And yeah, this has been really fun to work on. It's been almost, I think, just over a year since we first sort of sat down and laid out what this book would look like and could look like. It really has been a bit of a family project, which is interesting. It was Norm and I who were involved in a lot of the writing and working on it, but the design work was actually done by my husband, Nick Fruhling, who is a very talented graphic designer. He's more than that, but that's how I understand what his work is. And the editor was my sister-in-law, and so it's been really kind of this project that we've all been able to pool our talents together with and develop this workbook, which we're really excited to finally be able to share and talk a little bit more about. So here's a little quick glimpse inside the book and just what it looks like. These are just a few of the pages, but we thought we'd just start with who is this book for? There are a lot this book was written with a little bit less focus on unemployment, and it's a little bit more general. And so it can actually work for people who are working. It can work for people who are unemployed, but it also can work really well for individuals to, like, if somebody could go buy this book and fill it out themselves. But what I really had in mind when writing this was that it could be a companion for people who are working as career advisors or coaches or leading groups in career development. And it could provide a little bit of structure for people to work through. And so that's really the intention behind it, is that it just can really strengthen the work that you're already doing and give you something to hand to a client, and really have something tangible that they can hold and fill out and work through. Oh, the question about delightfully. Yes, that's a great question. That actually was the word delight came from my husband, who leads teams of designers, and it's one of his big things that he brings into his work is delight, and he's very conscious of that, and in his design and in everything he does. And so he suggested delight, because as we worked on it and talked about not just the content but also the vision visually of the book, we really wanted it to be delightful and fun, and sort of something that was easy to want to fill out, and that felt less like a chore to have to do, or homework that you had to do, but something that created a bit more lightness and joy even in the process of learning. So yeah. Oh, great question. I have a question about, is it more for adults or students in general education? It's for both. I am currently using it. I am working with, I have a student, or I have a client who is, I think, just out of university, and so just making decisions, but I've used it with people in high school. It probably, some of it doesn't apply as much to high school students, but the middle piece, the wheel, the career wheel that will show you, definitely does apply to that sort of age range. And it would work for anyone. It really does. It gives them just, it gives you just a structure and a way of understanding who you are and what's important for you. And so I'm not sure that there are really age restrictions on this, or times in life as well.
The English level, Andrea, I think it's, I think it would probably work. I mean, not if you just arrived from Canada from another country, but certainly for a lot of people, I think as they learn English, I think it's one of the ways people learn sometimes is by working their way through kind of workbooks like this or other kinds of things. So I think it should be all right for that.
Yeah, this is where probably having some support, or having this as a resource alongside the person you're working with would be beneficial. So here's, I don't know that if you're able to see this on your screen, but we just wanted to show you. Anyways, we're going to be going through some of the highlights of this book, and so what we show you is not the whole book, and there's much more, and the book goes much more in depth in some of the themes that we're going to highlight for you. So there's, if you, the black rectangle, those are some of the highlights that we really wanted to make sure people can find easily in the book. But then there is quite a bit more as well. And so I just wanted to make sure that that's said and that shared with you. There are a lot of different types of exercises and worksheets and prompts for thinking through different parts of career development that you can go through in this book. I think it's about, I don't actually know. I think it's about 90 pages long. This is what it looks like in the hand. And if you can see this, I know I'm sharing my screen. I'll stop sharing for a moment.
Andrea, one of the things I actually like that you added to this book, which I haven't seen in very many things, is uh, there's often a sense of you do an activity and you fill in a checklist or you do something else, and you've added a whole section called digging deeper to all of these, which is sort of interesting because you do finish it and then it's okay. Now let's just dig a little deeper into what you finished. And that's something I think that I hadn't, wasn't a part of the work I did before. But I think that really is how, kind of getting the most out of what people are doing is sort of asking them to do something and then to say, all right, let's take a moment, sit back, think about what sort of things do you see in there? Do you see some stuff, and getting that kind of a sense in there as well as just a bunch of checklists and things like this that you fill out.
Yeah, no, exactly. And we'll show you an example of that actually in just a few slides here. I wonder, Norm, do you want to talk about, we really initially started with, here's just one highlight, the hope action theory and just how that relates to this book.
Yeah, I've been working with the whole idea of hope, and the fact that it's so central to career development and that it has certain competencies that go with it. And and you have with hope, you've got you know, you have to have self-reflection and self-clarity and trying to understand who you are, and also some sense of visioning where you want to get to and the goals and how to plan for what you want to get move forward, and then have to implement it. And there's a adaptation in there, and all of it is kind of surrounded by the environment. It's a really interesting theory. It's something that has helped me put a lot of my work into a context. And I think we use that, in all of our work and sort of thinking about what we're doing. But we have activities throughout that sort of tag into these different competencies. And so really want to kind of put that right up front.
The other thing that you'll find, especially near the beginning, I mean, Norm made the comment earlier about how much he likes metaphors. We use a lot of metaphors in this book, and one of them is mapping. And so some of you may recognize the map of possibilities is based on another map resource that we have called the metaphor map. But this is one of the pieces in here. Is there are really almost like coloring pages in some cases where people can sit with an idea. They always come with a prompt and some questions to think about in relation to the map. And so we have the map of possibilities. And then there's also the stepping stones and looking more at employability dimensions and just inviting people to initially notice where they're at and think about where they are, and not viewing their career development as a destination, but rather seeing it as a bit more of a journey, and knowing that things might shift and change, and using the map or the metaphor of stepping stones to understand that a little bit.
One of the things that's interesting about this finding yourself and where locating yourself where you are is we introduce the idea of liminal space, and that's something I think that Andrea's really worked on and developed. The idea of being between, you're leaving someplace and going somewhere else, but sort of in that mid zone where you're sort of sitting there, not sure. Everything's a little cloudy. Maybe we go this way or that way, and sort of being okay with the uncertainty. And, looking at the career development literature, you have things like positive uncertainty, the fact that you need to move forward and be positive, but at the same time, there's a kind of sense of, be uncertain, to be not so sure, and living in that kind of tension. And that's something that's called liminal space. So there's a little segment in that as well.
Brian, I see your question about the QR codes. They are linking out to different resources that can support the workbook. And so it may be a card sort, it may be an assessment, it may be there's a job search strategies course that we have that's asynchronous. And so it's part of, in sort of in the spirit as well of those dig deeper sections, where it's like, if you want to go deeper, if you want to go learn a little more about this section, here's a way to do it. And it provides some additional resources and information on that. All right, Norm, do you want to talk about the career wheel here?
Well, I really love the career wheel. It's something that I've based my whole career around, is the fact that, in getting to the center point, finding out what should I do. I mean, people often ask, what should I do? And they kind of think of us, people working in career development, as, well, you're experts. Give me your quick, how long is this going to take? A half hour? Like, just give me a career direction, where I'm headed here. And I think, I like to say to people, if you look at what you want to get to that center point, but before that, there's lots of different components that we need to address. And and there's half of that circle deals with kind of more personal stuff, like your skills and your interests and your values and your personal style. And then the top half kind of talks about things like, you live in a context, so your significant others and the educational experiences you've had, the work experiences you've had, also, what kind of opportunities, career opportunities, more of the contextual information around, maybe an uncle, or you have a friend, and this kind of thing. So putting all that together, when you do that, and when you go through a systematic kind of uh, approach to this, it sort of points to things, well, people who have, in your kind of interests, seems to be kind of some of the areas they head towards, and given your opportunities. And so you see how they intersect. And so it's a really an interesting way to take people and put them on a sort of a systematic pathway that they can go through to analyze who they are, where they are, what's happening around them in the broader context. And it's been very helpful for people over the years, and not surprisingly, it's part of this workbook as well.
All right, so here is, oh, sorry, there's a,
The significant others.
okay,
Yeah, no, I
yeah.
mean, the significant others is so important, and especially in a cross-cultural milieu where we live now. And you know people are often saying, I want to do this, but, and then they have the parent or somebody sitting right, just behind them, saying, you should do this, do anything but arts, anything but, and things like this. And so you get a lot of messages from there. And so taking it into that broader social context is so important.
Here's just an example. We wanted to share with you just a full sort of cycle that or series of exercises that one might go through. And these exist for every segment of that wheel to help people really explore each of those segments or pie pieces or whatever you want to call them. And so this one is the transferable skills. And so you'll see there's sort of initially a little bit of a description about what that section means, just what we were kind of thinking about it when we talk about skills, and then an exercise or an activity to help them just sort of work through and think about how to expand their awareness of what their skills are. Some people might call this a tool to use or something. And so these are really, depending on the exercise, something that you could work through on your own, but also could be something that you could bring to and work through with a coach, and work through it together, and it gives you a bit of a structure for an exercise that you can work on together. And then there's a checklist. Everybody loves checklists, and sometimes it's hard to articulate just what is it that what are your skills? How do you name them? And so this just kind of helps get people started and gives them maybe some extra language around what are your transferable skills. This is not none of this is the list. It is more just a starting point and an invitation for people to begin brainstorming and thinking about what else might they name, what else could they come up with. And there's always, you'll see in most of the checklists, we provide empty spaces for people to fill in their own ideas that they've come up with. And then from there, there's the pulling it all together. And what we do is really shift from this sort of space of brainstorming and thinking of what are all the skills, what are all the values, or whatever it is that you're exploring, and invite them to then kind of shift into that self-clarity that we saw in the Hope Action Theory model, and really clarify, okay, what's most important for you though, and choose like what are your top 5, and just to start getting people to really narrow in on what their key skills are. And then you can see here there's a digging deeper section on this last page of the skills, and it really it talks about what that section is, but also how you can think about this a little bit more deeply if that's something that you want to do. And so that's where that digging deeper section looks. And often you'll find the language in the book, even there's throughout it, there's invitations to the user to bring this maybe to your career coach or to your career advisor, and this might be something that you want to talk through with somebody, and they could help you do it. And so it's written really with you in mind, and hoping that they'll come to you and want to partner with you on this work, and not just a book that they take away and fill out, but really something that you can collaborate together on and support as somebody works through it. All right, Norm.
Oh, okay. Another way to use, another way to use the wheel is really to start with the center in mind, saying, okay, I think I want to be a marine biologist. Okay, well, put that in the center. So then instead of starting from the outside looking in, you start from the inside looking out and say, okay, so what sort of interests do you think a marine biologist would have, and what sort of skills and what sort of educational pieces. And so it's just kind of, one is working from the outside in, the others from the inside out. And sometimes, and it's just a nice way of people sort of learning about an occupation by, figuring out what sort of educational level and experiences and all this sort, but also how does that fit with their, their personal style and who they are and what their interests are and things like that.
And you can see we have resources again, ways for people to go beyond then, once they have some ideas for themselves, to go and think about like, okay, well, who can I talk to about that? How does that work? What does that look like when I want to go and have an informational interview? Really acknowledging that these are things that also exist online, and here's a starting point. Again, here's a few sample questions or ideas of what you might ask, and let's go from here. And what else can you find and add to this? And so there's some questions to think about when you're filling out that career options wheel, so that you can hold it up next to your own wheel and compare the two and start understanding why something might be a good fit. And then also just some resources so people can take that next step and really start looking at how to explore what that might look like, and fill in maybe some of the gaps that exist. In the final sort of section of the book, we start looking at building up some momentum and looking at action planning and developing a bit more of an action. And this really comes out of coaching. I think coaching, as a practice is really has some really great strategies around how do you not just have these conversations with clients, but actually really support accountability and action planning in a way that helps your clients actually put what they're learning into action and continue with that even beyond the time that you have together. And so in this, again, we bring in the metaphors, and there's a lot of different types of themes and ways of thinking about next steps. From thinking about your life as a book, we talk about liminal space again, and the kind of the crossing through liminal space, and what that experience looks like, and change and transition. We talk a bit about that. But then also thinking about, like, if your life was a book, what would it be? What would the cover look like? And there's some worksheets in there just to sort of prompt that type of reflection, as well as looking at what would the next chapters be, and where are you heading from here. And so looking more sort of at a timeline of, like, where have you been, but now where are you heading, and what's the planning that you can do to help you continue to move forward. And so in this final section, there really is a focus on, are you ready to make a plan? What have you learned? And some of the coaches here might recognize some of these ideas, like, what have you learned about yourself? What have you learned about your career journey? And how are you going to now go from what you've learned and actually put it into action, and really develop a plan that's really clear, and linking back to the different pieces the work that you've done throughout the workbook, and even reflecting on your experience of completing this workbook and what that was like. And so we go through this, yeah, these pages of prompts, and these can be used as worksheets that you fill out, but these might also just provide you a structure to have a conversation with a client, and maybe it's just a place for you to jot down notes and sort of take note of some of the pieces that you're discussing. Yeah, Gina, I think you're talking about my life as a book here, and yeah, it's a great exercise for young people, and you can even I use it sometimes with youth and with groups of youth, and even thinking about, like, what genre is your book? And I know for some young people, it's a graphic novel, or it's a coloring book, or it just really can sort of be a fun way to start thinking about and reflecting on who you are. Norm, anything you want to add here? This is the end of sort of the book preview, so I just want to check and see.
One of the things I think this, and you mentioned this accountability, I think it's so, I mean, that's such an important piece of what we do is, taking people from the exploration piece, but moving them, like in the hope action theory, moving them around to actually an implementation or a goal setting or something, taking them off that piece and recognizing that you need sort of a full circle here. You don't, because you will find people who just love exploring themselves or whatever. And I think there's a little bit of everything in here. Um, eh, well, what one thing, and the thing is, you don't have to do everything in this workbook. I mean, I think that's another part is saying it doesn't it doesn't necessarily go, like from what start at the beginning, kind of work your way through. You can just pick out segments that you want to focus on. And I think that's important to say as well, is that it's not like you have to go page by page by page, but there might be some segments you spend a whole bunch of time on, or maybe some that you leave out, or the idea of the refugee story is dark. I've dealt with a lot of people, though we've done a lot of work with immigrants and refugees, and they often like to tell their stories and look, and yes, there's a darkness in there, but there also is a sense of accomplishment, how they got out and challenged and how they met challenges. So a lot of strengths that they get. And I think it's a sign of respect, but hearing a person's story and where they've come from, and not dwelling on it. I think that's the thing, is not to make that the whole thing you're going to dwell on, but saying respect them from where they've come from, what they've done, and now where they're headed, and moving out of that. And certainly, we've had good success in working with this with with those kind of groups.
Yeah, and I really I've used this as well with clients who are also who are refugees, and recognize taking really for myself even as like a strength-based approach to that conversation can be really helpful. I'm not a counselor, and so it can be helpful to acknowledge the story, to hear it, but also to know to be able to find, like Norm said, like the strength in it. And if it does get too deep, to also not be afraid to refer your client to somebody who is prepared to have those conversations, but not to not be afraid to go there and honor that story that happens. Sometimes I see with clients who have immigrated, is there's this a perspective where the story begins when they have moved, in this case to Canada, but there's such incredible strength and so much depth in the story that has come before. It's doing this exercise can be helpful, and there's different levels of depth as well that you can go. You can depending on your comfort and your ability and skill and training and all of that, you can go quite deeply into this exercise, but you also can um, sort of hold it a little bit more on the surface and just sort of create a few touch points for reference. Okay. Let's talk about training. So we have a few, as we were developing this book, we were saying like, oh, like there's so much here. And this is where even the QR codes, we're sort of pointing out to other resources and ways of working with it. And so we realized, oh, I think maybe it would be wise to develop a little bit of training to go alongside this book to support people as they're working out how to use this with clients, and even to just sort of deepen their understanding of some of the exercises so that you can support your clients well. And so we wanted to develop two options. So one is just a half-day workshop where we will sort of just go through a little bit of the book and talk through some of the different exercises you can use, just to sort of prepare you to be able to work with this book a bit more confidently with clients. And then we're also developing a longer term multi-week training, and we're actually already running one. It's a Wayfinder certification in here in Canada that with a group. And so with that, there's more mentorship that comes with that. And it's just much more in depth, and we go much more in depth into some of the ideas and approaches to working with clients. If you are an organization interested in this, what we've done with the organization that we're working with right now is we've actually been able to really customize training to fit for what it is that you're looking for. And so we sort of worked with them to figure out what it is that would be most beneficial, what we can offer, the types of training, and then also what it is that they're looking for. And we're able to develop a program that worked really well for them in that way. So there are options available. The entry point into most of these options is really just attending a half-day workshop and then going from there. So if you're interested in just finding out more, we have a wait list that is growing by the day. And so I'll put the link into the chat. And if you want to join the wait list, it just means that we will send you information about the training when it comes out, and you'll have access to an early bird rate, and the early bird pricing. You'll kind of know when it comes and get first crack at registration. Okay, let's talk about buying the book. We've learned about Amazon in the last month, and that's been a fun adventure. But basically, if you want to buy your own book and just like an individual copy, you can purchase it through you should be able to purchase it through any bookstore near you. Please don't pay terribly inflated prices for the book. Just kind of be aware that there are third-party sellers who are out there selling it, but you should be able to just walk into your bookstore, ask them to order it, and they can bring it in for you. If you are having trouble finding it, you can order it on Amazon, on your Amazon. What we've done is we've partnered with a printing company who has printers stationed all over the world. And so we didn't want people to have to pay astronomical shipping fees from Canada to Australia or Europe or wherever it is that we're sending it. Instead, we wanted to make it so that it could work around the world and be more of a global resource. And so if you are having trouble finding it wherever you are, please just send me an email. It's no problem. I don't mind. And I can just even order and send you one directly, and then we'll just invoice you for the book. So that's an option. If you're interested, it is not available as a digital copy. One of the things we realized when we were writing this is that if it were to become a digital copy, it loses its how tangible it is, and it's really meant to be something that you hand to your client with a pen, and they like fill it in and they work through it. It's almost like a sketchbook, like a workbook that you can just write directly in. And so if it's digital, that doesn't work as well. And so we wanted to make sure that people would be able to do that, which is why we have printers all over the world. Training is fully virtual. It will be online, fully online, all of it. And if we have people in different time zones, we'll try and sort of group people together in similar areas. And so it works and set things up for different areas. If you would like one set up in your area, and you have some people interested, let me know, and we can work with you to set up a half day. We also have bulk pricing available. Part of what we wanted with this book is I'd love someone to have like a box of books in their office that they can give to clients as they come in and work through. And so we have bulk pricing available. If you want to buy 10 or more books and just have them that you can sort of share with your clients or people that you're working with. You can email me directly and I will invoice and send you books, and we have a bulk pricing. You'll get 20% off of the books if we do it that way. And if you are an instructor, we do have this book will be I believe it will be in a few classrooms already. And so if you are an instructor, and I know I've sent out a few desk copies already, but if you need a desk copy, please just reach out to me and we can send you one.
In answer to the question about clients don't necessarily have to have the assistance of a career development professional with them, but we think it's a great idea to have that. But there'll be lots of people that'll just use this, I think, on their own and won't necessarily have that access. But we think it's just an added plus to sort of have somebody that you're working with.
And it
There
is suggested in the book. It's the way that it's written. It says, like, this might be a helpful exercise to take to a career coach to work through. And so that suggestion shows up frequently through the book. So people know that that's a resource, even for someone who might buy the book and not have someone that they're working with. It might just sort of prompt them to think, oh, maybe I should go find a career coach, and to go and look for somebody to support them with it.
Something that we might also mention is for a lot of people, we see this as something that'll go into translations. And so we're willing to work if you're in a situation where you enjoy working with the book, and you're working in a country where translation might be useful or helpful. Contact us and contact Andrea. Don't contact me. Contact Andrea, and we can talk about how that might work and how we could set that up for you.
All right, I'm going to just share this so you can see our email addresses here. I did put my email in the chat as well, but do feel free to reach out. And if you have questions, we're happy just to sort of talk and answer any questions you might have. If there's anything that you're wondering about, or also if you just want to say hi, that's okay too. But thank you everybody for coming. Thanks, Brian. And yeah, we do. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Tom.
Oh no, it's I really am so pleased to see this coming to fruition, because it brings together so many different ideas and approaches, and also it's set up in a way which is interesting for me. I mean, I've been involved in publishing career materials all my career, but it can change. I mean, that's one of the things, the way it's set up. If there's new information, or we want to add an activity or take something out or add, uh, that can all, it's very easy to make new additions, because of the way in which it's been designed. So I really appreciate the design of the book and how it's been set up, and also the fact that we have that flexibility. But be careful there are people out there who are trying to sell this for extra, funds. And it's amazing to me, because I've seen that my whole career. I've had people who've said to me, "Oh, I just bought your book. Really nice. Oh, yeah. How much did you pay for it? Oh, $400. Oh, it's a little more than what I was charging for it." But there are people out there that are doing this kind of thing. So be careful of that.
Great. Are there any other questions? Anyone wondering anything, or yeah, anything that we can answer for you?
I'm glad that you thought it included both delight and engagement.
Yes, thanks, Catherine. Nice to see you as well. I'm glad you could join. Oh, yeah, I think it's, oh, Lisa, yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering, you mentioned that there's points within the book where you recommend this might be a good point to, or a good space to bring to a career coach. Do you give, is there a QR code for that to help people link in with career coaches, qualified career
There's
coaches at
not.
all? No, okay.
No, just because there's because it's going around the world and there's so many, I would hope that they can find their own or Google, or I do sometimes get asked about coaching, and I try and kind of refer out to people I know who are career coaches. But yeah.
And Canada is
One day.
difficult too, isn't it? Because it's provincial, the provision of registered career development professionals. Is that right?
It's
Yeah,
just,
Rather
there's,
than national. Yeah.
yeah,
oh,
yeah, it is.
that's right.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think it's moving towards national, but yeah, there's a lot of different, there's career advisors and career coaches and lots of different, and sometimes also people are working with a coach, and this is something I was kind of thinking about as well. And a career conversation just naturally sort of emerges. And you're maybe not a career coach, but it's just because career spans so much of life and so much of who we are, that it's hard for it not to sort of seep into lots of different types of conversations and coaching conversations. And so I wanted to create something that somebody could sort of grab onto if they find themselves in that situation, and bring into a coaching session and say, like, well, here's a resource, maybe this would be helpful, and be able to sort of bring that through with a client, and be able to continue working with that client and not feel kind of lost in the midst of that career conversation.
It's interesting. I often wonder sometimes there's people called career influencers who aren't in the profession necessarily, but they influence people. And sometimes even just having another person that you can talk it through is useful, I think. And it's particularly if that person is somebody who has, quite a high level of significance to you.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to stop sharing so we can actually see people's faces again, or you can see us if you need to. Thank you all for joining. Yeah, we'll be here. We're here for a few more minutes. If anyone wants to just pop on and ask a question or anything, we're here.
So nice to see all these faces and people.
I just
people
want to
go
say
back.
thank you for very inspirational book launch. Congratulations. And it's I followed your work for a long time, and your literature also, and then more on the late years, Andrea also on LinkedIn. Then it's very inspirational to hear that you have put it together with the liminal space and the career wheel and the new perspective. So I'm waiting for the book to land here also.
Should be out there now, somewhere in the cyberspace.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us. Whether you're watching the recording or attending live, we appreciate your interest and the support that we've gotten so far about Career Wayfinder. If you'd like to learn more about training, we mentioned putting a link in the chat. And if you weren't able to see that, here's a QR code that you can scan to join the waitlist. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. We're always happy to connect with you. Take care.